Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Standing Committee of General Government to order. I'd like to welcome all members of the committee, Clerk Hansard, and we have a special delegation with us today as observers. We have the National Assembly of Vietnam Law Committee, so I'd like to extend on behalf of all the members of the committee a welcome this morning, and I hope you enjoy the proceedings here. At the last meeting of yesterday, we had a motion that was put onto the table by Mr. Walker. Unfortunately, time had expired yesterday. Would you be interested, Mr. Walker, in just reading it back into the record?
Yes, please.
Again, okay, go ahead, sir. Mr.
Thank you,
Walker.
Chair. I move that the committee amend the method of proceeding on Bill 45, an act to enhance public health by enacting the Healthy Menu Choices Act 2014 and the Electronic Cigarettes Act 2014, and by amending the Smoke-Free Ontario Act to reflect the following. 1, that the committee hold public hearings on Bill 45 in Toronto at Queen's Park on Monday, April 27th and on Wednesday, April 29th, 2015 during its regular meeting times. 2, that any additional witnesses are to be selected from the prioritized list previously supplied to the clerk by the subcommittee members. 3, that groups and individuals be offered 5 minutes for their presentations, followed by up to 9 minutes for questions by committee members. 4, that the deadline for receipt of written submissions on Bill 45 be 5 p.m. on Wednesday, April 29, 2015. 5, that amendments to Bill 45 be filed with the clerk of the committee by 3 p.m. on Thursday, April 30, 2015. And 6, that the committee meet on Monday, May 4, 2015, during its regular meeting time for clause-by-clause consideration of Bill 45.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. I just would remind all committee members that we do have a tight schedule here with a number of delegations ready to present, but I will ask for discussion. Ms. Thompson.
If I may, Chair, I think it's important that we could seriously consider this motion to extend the hearings, because the reality is we had over 100 organizations that were interested in sharing deputations on Bill 45, and clearly we should be, in the spirit of democracy, we should be giving as many organizations as possible the opportunity to exercise their voice. And I say that because I'm concerned. Yesterday afternoon, we heard a deputation from the Canadian Beverage Association, and in that deputation, we heard very distinctly that proper official consultation has not been conducted with stakeholders regarding Bill 45. And Chair, I fear we have a significant trend happening here. We heard this on neonics, we heard this on the climate change. They had public consultations, but for goodness sakes, not one aspect and common thread coming out of those consultations landed in what we hear this government talking about today with regards to climate change. And then just yesterday we heard with regards to Bill 45, stakeholders had not been properly consulted again. I'm concerned about this trend. It needs to stop. A true democracy allows people an opportunity to share their opinions so that they can have an effective impact on the future of Ontario and the way it's regulated and products in this province are sold. And I just want to go on record, again, stressing that enough is enough. The lack of consultation by this government is disgraceful, and it needs to stop. And I think we can all team together here today, lead by example, and allow for an extension of hearings. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jelena.
As much as I'm really anxious to see this bill going through, for some part of that bill, I have been working for 7 years to bring this bill to Ontario, and I certainly do want it to go through. But this being said, at the same time, I know that we have a number of people that have never reached out to the Legislative Assembly before. Those are people that have never come to committee before. They have never been engaged in the political process. They have never spoken to MPPs in their lives. You can see by the testimonies that they give that this is completely foreign to them. And finally, we have citizen participation. They ask to talk to us. They come and they do their deputation as best as they can. Do I agree with everything that is said? It doesn't matter if I agree or doesn't. I agree that we live in a democracy, that when we put a piece of legislations forward, no matter how long I have waited for that piece of legislations to get here. I think it is important to give people a chance to be engaged in the legislative process, especially when it is people that are doing this for the first time in their lives. For them, for once, politics matters. What we do here at Queen's Park has sufficient meanings in their lives that it motivates them to actually put their names forward and come. So for those reasons, if we do have people that want to come and talk to us, I want to listen to what they have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Just before any further discussion, I just want to point out that we do have an agenda here. We do have individuals that are looking forward to speak. We do have to recess at 10:15, and then it's 4 p.m. by the next time that we, so if we have to delay one or two of the delegations, so I'm going to ask the committee if there's unanimous consent perhaps that we could move this to 5 p.m. This evening. It looks like there's some openings within the agenda at that time. I think we could, as a committee, accomplish the same thing and still hear from our delegations, but I leave it in your hands. It's 5 is 5? Yes. Okay, so we have unanimous. You'd like to speak now? Okay, okay, Mr. Cole, I allowed one from each, so I'll allow Mr.
Yeah,
Cole.
democracy, everybody gets to speak, right? Sorry, I get to speak too.
Mr. Cole.
Anyways, the process is set out here through the House. We had a full subcommittee meeting where we discussed the times, the dates, the framework of these hearings, and who would get to speak. We did that through subcommittee. Then we had agreed upon by the subcommittee of all three parties. Then we came into full committee here for a full committee meeting to discuss the subcommittee report that was agreed upon. At that time, I moved a couple of amendments in full discussion to add another day to the hearings and to proceed with the extra day. And that was all laid out in full committee by all three parties, agreed upon, voted upon, agreed upon. So then we proceed with the hearings, and we have the delegations come forward. Now, in the middle of the hearings, we have a motion here before us which says, oh, we want to change the rules again, and forget what we decided upon the subcommittee or the full committee hearing. We want to change the rules again of how we proceed. This is not a beneficial way of doing things because you just can't make up the rules as you go along. It's like in the middle of a procedure, you set up new rules of how you're going to do this. It's not fair to all the people that have been trying to be part of this. It's not fair to the equity of the process by changing the rules in midstream when we agreed as full committee twice already. So I just do not support this changing of the rules in midstream, especially when I think tonight we've got another hour where we couldn't find anybody to come and speak. That's empty. So I think we should vote on this now and let the people know that these rules and procedures have been agreed upon by all three parties. Now we've got one party that wants to change the rules again. I don't think that's fair.
Okay, so I've heard from each side. I think as chair, my responsibility is to move the business forward. We do have delegations here. I'm going to ask the committee or tell the committee we're going to deal with this at 5 p.m. And we'll see how the things unfold at this particular time. One last thing before we get started, since we're going to be missed, maybe the 10 a.m. will not be scheduled because we're late. Can we move forward as a committee with 2 minutes of questioning from each side in order to stay on schedule? Is there any opposition to that? Okay, so that's what I will do. It'll be 2 minutes of questioning followed by the delegation making its presentation. So we will call right now the National Smokeless Tobacco Company Limited, Mr. Jerry Adams. He's Director of Government and Corporate Affairs. We'd like to welcome you. You have 5 minutes, sir, followed by 2 minutes of questioning from each of the three parties. Thanks for your patience, sir.
Problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Jeremy Adams. I'm the Director of Government and Corporate Affairs at the National Smokeless Tobacco Company. NSTC is the Canadian distributor of smokeless tobacco products sold in Canada under the brand names of Copenhagen and Skoal. At NSTC, we pride ourselves on being a leader in responsibly providing smokeless tobacco products to adult tobacco consumers. One of our mission goals is to help reasonable tobacco regulations succeed by supporting the development and implementation of regulations that improve public health and recognize individual adult consumer preferences. Our products are for adults only. We believe that children should not use any tobacco product, and we take our responsibility seriously by supporting and participating in programs to help reduce underage use of tobacco. Smokeless tobacco is used orally and is not smoked, and has been in Canada since at least 1913. Our products are available at approximately 3,700 retail locations in the province. NSTC is concerned that the proposed regime under Bill 45 is not reasonable tobacco regulation and does not recognize individual adult consumer preferences. Given the extremely high price point of smokeless tobacco, a provincial prohibition on retail visibility of tobacco, low reported youth usage, and the relatively small sales compared to all other tobacco products in Ontario, we believe that smokeless tobacco as a category should be exempt from the proposed ban contained in Bill 45. It's important to understand the actual sales of smokeless tobacco in the province of Ontario when making legislative decisions affecting these products. In 2013, smokeless tobacco sales accounted for less than 1/3 of 1% of all tobacco sold in the province. This represents approximately 1.7 million cans of smokeless tobacco, compared to more than 450 million packages of cigarettes. Our products retail in Ontario for approximately $19 per can plus HST, almost double the price of a package of cigarettes. Tobacco products come in a wide range of flavor varieties, some of which have a distinguishable flavor or aroma other than tobacco. Such varieties are not new. Some flavors of smokeless tobacco, including peach and apple-flavored snuff, have patents that date back to the 1800s. Recently, some in the public health community have expressed concern that tobacco products with flavors other than tobacco may appeal to youth. NSTC believes that the prohibition of smokeless tobacco products with flavors other than tobacco is not an effective way to address the issue of underage tobacco use and is unfair to adult tobacco consumers who prefer such varieties. NST also believes that any regulation of flavored tobacco should take into account the history of flavors within each category. In 2009, the federal government introduced Bill C-32, which banned the sale of flavored cigarettes, cigarillos, and blunt wraps, establishing a common standard across all provinces. And appropriately, the federal legislation does not ban the sale of flavored smokeless tobacco, a segment that simply has not shown itself to be of significant youth appeal. The Canadian Tobacco, Alcohol and Drug Survey, or CTADS, reports that in 2013, 1% of Canadian youth 15 to 19 reported past 30-day use of smokeless tobacco products, and these rates remained unchanged from 1999. I'd like to offer for consideration the following specific comments regarding Schedule 2 of Bill 45. First, in considering exemptions for the ban on the sale of flavored tobacco products, the government should refer to factual data contained in the CTADS. This data has consistently demonstrated a low prevalence of past 30-day use of smokeless tobacco among all Canadians. Second, under Section 9 of Schedule 2 of Bill 45, the Smoke-Free Ontario Act is amended to include the regulatory authority to define a flavoring agent. In this regard, any regulations developed by the government must consider the manufacture of smokeless tobacco products. This manufacturing is unique and distinct from many other tobacco products. Specifically, it must be recognized that the use of flavor additives in a smokeless tobacco product does not necessarily mean that the product is flavored. Failing to recognize the unique attributes of tobacco products with respect to flavoring agents could have the unintended consequence of prohibiting products that have a dominant flavor of tobacco, but which contain ingredients that individually might be defined as a flavoring agent, though those ingredients do not result in a characterizing flavor. And finally, there's been some discussion regarding a delayed ban for menthol. Menthol is a flavor used in smoked tobacco products. If the government is considering any exemption for menthol, then NSTC requests that this exemption is clarified to extend to the comparable flavors of mint, wintergreen, and spearmint in the smokeless tobacco category, varieties which have been on the market in Canada since at least 1950. NSTC believes the proposed flavored tobacco ban is unfair to adult tobacco consumers and unfair to the retailers who sell those products. Product bans hurt law-abiding businesses and create incentives for criminals to engage in illicit activity. The implementation of the ban outlined in Bill 45 could result in millions of dollars in annual retail sales disappearing from the legitimate tobacco retail market in Ontario. We do not believe that is sound public policy. It is the government's responsibility to make policy decisions that deter, not encourage, illicit activity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well done, sir. Right on. Thank you very much. So we'll begin with Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, for your deputation. Can you just expand a little bit on your categorical exemption in number 1?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Walker. What we're suggesting is that it would be appropriate for the government to look at different categories differently. So, for example, you could exempt certain flavors in one category, but permit those flavors in another category. So what we've suggested is that the government should have an entire class of products that is exempt by regulation. The province of Manitoba passed a flavor ban bill last June, Bill 52. That legislation actually specified specific categories of products that were not covered by the ban, and those included pipe tobacco, chewing tobacco and snuff, and any menthol tobacco product.
The other is, I trust number 4, your proposed date is certainly from this perspective that people have a large inventory of a lot of products, so this is going to be very much a hit to their bottom line.
Yes, some deputants yesterday suggested that this should be immediate. There was reference made to Nova Scotia, which has a bill that's scheduled to come into effect on May 31st. I would say that individuals who propose that really don't understand the retail industry in this province. When you look at specifically what's the other tobacco products category, which includes products like ours, these are not high volume products for retailers. Retailers could be sitting on 3 to 4 months of inventory in the case of our products, which is a freshness product. In the case of some other products, they could have inventories up to a year. Then you have wholesale before that. So when you walk into a convenience store, it hasn't just appeared on the shelf. And similarly, you can't just have it disappear from the shelf. There's a whole infrastructure that gets that product to market. Wholesalers could have 3 to 4 to 6 months of inventory of products. So when you look at the entire supply chain, it's important you understand the impacts on businesses before determining a date that is just pulled out of the air, for example.
And finally, can you just give us a little bit, I think there's a lot of misnomers out there in regard to the health status of the products that you're specifically representing. Can you just give us a bit of your side of that equation?
First of all, we don't make any health claims about our products whatsoever, and we suggest that any tobacco consumer should be guided by public health officials in decisions in making any choices about what products they want to use. Health Canada has specified 4 specific warning labels for our products. They've determined that the tobacco products, including smokeless tobacco, are addictive and cause serious disease. That being said, there is a consensus in the public health community, the medical and the scientific community, that the use of non-combustible tobacco products is considerably less harmful than the use of combustible tobacco products.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Ms. Jelinek.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Adam. My first question has to do with how much switch back and forth do you know happens between people who chew and people who smoke? Is there a percentage that do both, and is one a gateway to the other, or the other a gateway to the first?
I'm not familiar with any research that's been done in Canada on that specific issue. Certainly, we haven't done any research on that issue as well. Health Canada does track some data on cigarette smoking, but it's very limited in what they get into in terms of what you call dual usage, which is switching between products. There has been a tremendous amount of research done in the European Union around smokeless tobacco, and that research has demonstrated fundamentally in Sweden that there is no gateway between smokeless tobacco products and cigarette smoking.
Okay. Specifically with flavor, I come from Northern Ontario.
Yes.
And I get to know the different flavors by playing baseball, and you go down the bench and you look at all the different flavors of chews, and every summer there are new flavors coming up. How many flavors does your company presently offers?
First of all, it's not true that there's new flavors coming out every summer. We haven't launched a new flavor in a considerable period of time. We offer 5 fruit-flavored products, and then we have a variety of products in what I call the mint, wintergreen, and spearmint varieties of tobacco products. And just to give you a sense of perspective of the business here, if we look at a product like cherry smokeless tobacco, which many people have said used as a sort of fire starter for the issue of tobacco use and flavored tobacco, if you look at where we're sold in the province, Mr. Bryans from the Convenience Store Association yesterday talked about more than 7,000 retail locations in Ontario. We're in about half of those stores. Of the stores that we sell, if all those stores sold cherry tobacco, you're looking at less than 1 can per store every 2 weeks. Less than 1 can per store every 2 weeks.
What kind of a markup does the retailer put on
So,
chew tobacco?
Well, the biggest markup comes from the government, first of all, which is taxes. This is a very heavily taxed product. So if we look at the case of our products in Ontario, there's $6.50 of federal excise tax on our product. There's almost $5 of Ontario's tobacco tax. Then, of course, there's tax on tax, which is the sales tax, which is about $2.50. So we're looking at $13, $14 in tax on a product. The rest of the pie on that, what I suggested is a $19 price, is what it costs to make the product, what it costs to ship the product, what it costs for the distributor to get the product to the retailer, and then what the retailer sells the product for.
thank you very much, and we'll move to the government side. Ms. Hogarth.
Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. As a former educator, I'm very adamant about this subject. I don't want any products getting into the hands of youth. So I may seem not to be very pleasant, but this is something that upsets me greatly. As a matter of fact, on Sunday, I saw two young teenagers, about 13 and 14, get someone go in and buy them tobacco products and come back out. And I did confront them, and I tried to catch the gentleman that bought it for them, and I would have called the police on him had I met him. Help me out here. Smokeless tobacco is chewing tobacco, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, smokeless tobacco is highly addictive. All the research shows it causes mouth disease, can cause cancer, and is not a safe alternative to cigarettes. It is not less harmful than the research says it is not less harmful than other products. You're required to carry those warnings on every one of your products. Do you think it is acceptable that more than 15,000 young Ontarians are using this product in a given 30-day period? I
don't know where you got that number from, but in terms of the 15,000, I've certainly not seen that number. The data we look to is data published by Statistics Canada, the Canadian Tobacco, Alcohol and Drug Survey. It's one of the most comprehensive Statistics Canada waves that's done in this country. That data shows that less than 1% of people use this product across the country, period. So to extrapolate some of those numbers, I'm not sure where those are coming from. Moreover, when you look at the actual sales volume, as I mentioned to Madame Jelena, this product represents less than 1/3 of 1% of all tobacco that's sold in the province of Ontario. 99.7% of tobacco is something other than smokeless tobacco products.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Adams. We appreciate you coming before committee.
Thank you for your time.
You're quite welcome, sir. Okay. Is Mr. Stephen Getz here by chance? And I just want to remind everyone also that there is an overflow room in Committee Room 2. So Mr. Getz has not arrived yet, but I believe we have representation from Big Tobacco Lies campaign ready to go. Okay, welcome. If you'd be so kind as to introduce yourselves. You have 5 minutes, and then to make your presentation, followed by 2 minutes of questioning from the three parties.
Perfect.
So, welcome.
Good morning. My name is Kalation,
And my name is Shadi Musavinia.
and we are youth advocates with the Canadian Cancer Society's Big Tobacco Lies campaign. Big Tobacco Lies is a youth-led awareness and advocacy campaign created by youth from across Ontario. Our campaign aims to expose the manipulative tactics used by the tobacco industry to recruit new smokers. One of these tactics is flavored tobacco. We developed our campaign in early 2014 and with support from the Canadian Cancer Society. Our campaign is led by 15 youth leaders from across the province and supported by over 60 student ambassadors. We host events at our schools and in our communities to raise awareness with students about the dangers of flavored tobacco and rally their support to help end the flavor. Last year alone, we delivered over 3,400 signatures of support to MPPs. We hosted 6 Day of Action rallies across the province and last spring, and then brought our voice and support to Queen's Park here this past fall. We held a tug-of-war demonstration on Queen's Park grounds where we involved several MPPs in helping to pull down flavored tobacco. We personally delivered over 2,500 postcards of support that day and had meetings with 10 MPPs. We also had the opportunity to speak at MPP France Galina's press conference, where she announced her private member's bill that, if passed, would ban flavored tobacco products, including menthol, in Ontario. Bill 45 was introduced by Associate Minister of Health, Deepika Damirla, less than a week after our day of action here at Queen's Park. We are very passionate about this issue and are very proud of what we've achieved in our campaign so far.
There is definitely no doubt that the use of flavored tobacco products is an important issue among today's youth. Half of high school students in Canada who have reported smoking use flavored tobacco products that taste like strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, and other flavors. And these products aim to mask tobacco's harsh taste and are packaged to look, smell, and taste like candy. This creates a false perception that these products are less harmful, and they encourage youth experimentation. I can confidently say that at almost all high schools across the region, including my own high school back in Richmond Hill, there is a smoker's corner. Walking by this corner every day when I was in high school and watching my peers use tobacco, including menthol, motivated me to take action. Menthol has always been a popular flavor among youth smokers, and that is no surprise, as more than 19,000 Ontario youth smoke menthol cigarettes. And we urge you to resist the pressure from big tobacco and not delay implementing Bill 45 any longer, and the ban on menthol needs to come at the same time as flavored tobacco. Since flavored tobacco products target youth and over 90% of smokers start to smoke before the age of 18, this ban will help prevent my peers from becoming the next generation of smokers.
Like Shadi, my own high school back in Markham had a smoker's corner, and I've witnessed many of my peers use flavored and menthol tobacco products. The fact of the matter is the youth is a key target demographic for big tobacco, and flavored tobacco is one of their primary means of accessing this market. Flavors reduce the harshness of cigarette smoke for youth, allowing them to get addicted more easily, and as many smokers will tell you, the earlier on the onset of addiction, the more difficult it is to quit in the future. In the last 30 days, more than 57,000 youth reported using flavored tobacco products. This has been a concerning sign for not only myself, but my peers and colleagues at my school at McMaster University in Hamilton as well. There, we have an incredibly supportive community who, from experiences of their own and those of their peers, have understood how compelled they felt to smoke due to youth-friendly packaging and a sense of normalization that has come with this behavior. And they've shared with me their regrets, difficulties, and consequences that have come with these decisions. Over the last year, this community has been signing postcards, reaching out to our government, educating the public to show vocal support for Bill 45, which is the most comprehensive piece of tobacco control legislation since the Smoke-Free Act of Ontario in 2006. On behalf of this community, the Canadian Cancer Society, and supporters across the province, we implore you to take this next step with us in helping the youth of Ontario make more informed decisions about their health and the future.
Volunteering with the Canadian Cancer Society's Big Tobacco Lies campaign is very important to us because we want to help the society create a world where no Canadian fears cancer. And like Kalatian, I am tired of witnessing cancer ruin lives, and it is time that we work together to stop this disease. We have the power to work together and eradicate cancer and make it history. And I would just ask you guys to please pass Bill 45 and help our future, a future free of my peers becoming tempted by flavored tobacco. And we would like to thank you for your time, and if you guys have any questions.
Thank you very much. Good job, Ms. Jelinet.
Great job, great job. Thank you so much for coming, Kalasian, and thank you, Shady. My first question I have for you is, you've addressed this a bit. Can you think of any valid reason why we should delay the ban on menthol?
I would say that for me, it does not make any sense that a flavor that numbs a smoker to tobacco's harsh consequences and its health effects to not being incorporated. It's still a flavor, and it encourages youth, and it's an appeal to youth, and I do not see a reason for why it should not be implemented.
And of all the work that you have done, are you convinced that youth do use menthol?
Of course.
Yes, menthol is, I believe, a key gateway product to long-term smoking. And a lot of youth, like we've mentioned before and touched upon, is that menthol reduces the harshness of cigarettes. So a lot of incoming youth are using these products, and while they don't realize it now, this is something that will set them on a path that will be difficult to leave from. And this is how long long-term smokers are created. So it is a concerning and pressing issue.
You were there when the previous speaker was there, sorry. Do you feel that chew tobacco should be excluded from the flavor ban?
Sorry, chewing tobacco?
Chewing tobacco also come in different flavors. They are asking that chewing tobacco be excluded from the ban, that we would only ban flavored in smoking tobacco, but not in chewing tobacco.
Of course not. As I told you back in my own high school, and the Smokers Corner that I mentioned, I know people who use that product. And if we have the power to remove a product that causes cancer and encourages youth to experiment with tobacco, then we should definitely include it in the ban.
Thank you very
For
much.
my own, oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. Time is up, so we'll move to the government. Ms. Koala.
Thank you very much, and I'm really inspired by your deputation. I think you've both done an absolutely fantastic job. It's really encouraging to see youth taking part in this process and being so committed to better health for youth in general. I wanted to make a couple points about this bill that I know you're familiar with. We also believe that flavored tobacco is a gateway to regular tobacco use. I started smoking when I was quite young, and I started with menthol, and I think we discovered yesterday that 3 out of the 3 of us on this side had the same circumstance. So I think there's a fair bit of evidence to suggest that that's the case. We've heard from many witnesses. You've probably been following what's been happening, and including some from the tobacco industry, that Bill 45 will push young smokers to contraband tobacco, and it won't help anyone to quit. Do you believe that that's the case?
Not at all. Like you've mentioned, it's important. We're not here to force students or youth to quit smoking. We're trying to help them make more informed decisions. The fact that there are products out there that are packaged similar to the candy we would give to 10-year-old children is a concerning issue, and it's not helping that idea of informing youth about the decisions they're about to make. So we really feel that this bill is an essential component to making sure that students are understanding of all the consequences that come with the choices they make, and trying to encourage them to make healthier choices in their lifestyle.
Very much. Appreciate that. We'll move to Mr. Walker from the official opposition.
Thank you very much for your presentation. A couple of things that I noted weren't in your presentation, I'd just like to get a bit of feedback on from your perspective is, would you support legislation that would actually involve and put legislation in place that would make it illegal to possess as a youth tobacco? And why has that not been included in your deputation?
To legalize the possession of flavored tobacco?
To make it illegal for you to
illegal.
have. There's nothing in the legislation that even addresses that. You know, alcohol you can't have, but someone on a high school yard or a public school yard can actually possess alcohol or possess tobacco. That to me would be a huge deterrent. But there's nothing in your presentation. Many of the submissions that have been made, there's been no talk of that. There's nothing in the legislation. Would you support that as an amendment?
I think our current stance, what we've been trying to do with our campaign is focusing on components at a time, and this has been our focus for the year. We really feel this is what we've been trying to tackle, and it's been a realistic goal for us. Personally, I would be, this is something that I think is up for debate in the future, but in the current time, we are aiming for banning flavored tobacco. So yeah.
And what about contraband? There's again nothing in your presentation about it. So I have 2 youth, young gentlemen that are sons of mine that when I talk to them about this, a lot of the starting of smoking actually has got nothing to do with flavored tobacco. It's all about contraband tobacco. And again, there's nothing in your presentation. Can you just share with me why that's not an area of focus?
Our campaign is heavily focused on flavored tobacco products, and it's one of the main issues that we are focusing on right now, but that is for sure a topic of debate, as Kalashian mentioned, in the future, and that would be a step perhaps in the near future.
So have you done any studies of the actual volume of flavored tobacco versus contraband at the schools that you have surveyed?
In terms of contraband, we have not conducted as much study on that. Again, our campaign is aimed at targeting different facets of what's a very complicated issue. So when we set out a year, our campaign this year has been aiming at flavored tobacco specifically. That's what we've been trying to push for and trying to figure out the most realistic and approachable way to taking this off the shelves. Again, we're not here to telling you to take all tobacco off the shelves, but our process is, this is how we work, and we haven't done as much study yet, as I know of.
Okay, well, Mr. Walker.
Yeah,
I'm just
okay.
saying, those are the two areas that in my backyard are much more prevalent than the flavor, so it was just interesting to understand why you went there as opposed to the other two.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. So, and I'd like to thank both of you for coming before committee this morning. You did a great job. Okay. Is Mr. Stephen Getz here? I believe not, so we shall move to the Department of Nutritional Sciences, University of Toronto. Welcome. I'll allow you to introduce yourself, if that would be fine, so I don't mispronounce your name.
All right.
And the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, followed by 2 minutes of question from each party.
Thank you. All right, good morning. My name is Mary Skorbatakos. I am a PhD candidate from the University of Toronto, and I do research on the restaurant food supply and menu labeling. So I'm here today to speak with you about sodium, which really is the missing nutrient from Bill 45. There we go. So at the University of Toronto, we did a national survey of 3,000 Canadians, and we asked them, what nutrition information do you want to see on restaurant menus? And 71% of the consumers in our survey said that they want to see sodium on restaurant menus. Furthermore, we found that when we gave consumers menus with sodium and they used that information to influence their choice, the sodium content of their meal was decreased by 900 milligrams. That is a very significant decrease, and that is not insubstantial. So the take-home message from this research really is that consumers want to see sodium information on restaurant menus, and furthermore, we have evidence demonstrating that having sodium information present would benefit consumers. At the University of Toronto, we've also created a giant database of Canadian chain restaurant foods, all of the ones that you can see in this slide. And we've used this database to analyze a number of different nutrient levels in the restaurant food supply. In particularly, we've looked at sodium, and we've found that 85% of sit-down restaurant meals contain more than the daily recommended amount of sodium. When we published this data back in 2010, the industry's response was that they had gotten better. So this motivated us to recollect our data again and see, indeed, what improvements had been made. And what did we find? Well, we found that over that 3-year period, the number of foods containing more than a day's worth of sodium did not change. In fact, when you look at changes, we see that 54% of foods stayed the same, 30% decreased, albeit marginally, and 16% of foods increased over this 3-year period, to our surprise. So the take-home message here really is that sodium levels in restaurant foods continue to be unacceptably high. I think that the rationale for sodium labeling is pretty clear. We see data that it will help consumers to make informed choices. But the second point, and I think this is actually the more important point that's often overlooked, is the fact that sodium labeling will motivate restaurants to decrease sodium levels in their foods. And we've seen evidence of this in the United States, in King County, Washington, which is a district that has implemented not only calorie labeling, but also sodium labeling. They found that after the implementation of their menu labeling bill, the sodium levels in the entrees being offered in their city have actually decreased as a result of this policy. So as I begin to wrap up, I'd just like to review a few of the key points. What single nutrient kills 1.65 million people each year? That nutrient is sodium. What nutrient do 80% of Canadian men and 60 to 80% of Canadian women overconsume? Sodium. 85% of restaurant meals contain more than a day's worth of which nutrient? Sodium. What nutrient level got worse in 16% of restaurant foods over the last 3 years? Sodium. And finally, what nutrient do 71% of Canadians want to see on restaurant menus? Again, the answer is sodium. So to conclude, I have a little game for everyone. In the room can participate. I'm showing you here 3 typical menu items that you can get at a popular chain that's located across Canada. And if I asked you to guess, which do you think has the most sodium? Which would you think it is? And everyone you can raise your hand. Who thinks it's the large hot chocolate? Anybody? One? Who thinks it's the strawberry muffin? Any takers? Okay, and finally, who thinks it's the English muffin with cheese and eggs? A few, a lot of people not voting, that's okay. Let's see, in fact, the large hot chocolate is the highest sodium item in this collection. So I think this really illustrates the point that when you're dining out, you have no idea how much sodium is in the potential meal items that you could be ordering. And this is why sodium labeling is so important, and this is why Bill 45 should include mandatory sodium labeling on restaurant menus. Thank you for your time and for the privilege of allowing me to address you today. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. So we'll start with the government side. Mr. Thibault.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Like the Chair, I'm not going to try to attempt to say your last name. Is
That's
it
fine.
Scorbutakis?
Scorbutakos.
Thank you for
Easier
that.
than it looks.
So you've talked a lot about obviously sodium in your presentation, and you know the bill talks a lot about menu labeling as well. And I think one of the important aspects that maybe you could touch on is healthy weight and the importance, especially with you're talking a lot about restaurants and fast food, when it comes to children and childhood obesity. So maybe you could speak to some of that as well.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, sodium is an indirect contributor to unhealthy weights because we know when we eat a high salty meal, what happens? We get thirsty. And when you're in a restaurant, often the beverages that are accompanying your meal are sugar-sweetened beverages. So in fact, the salty food is propagating obesity by making us more thirsty. And if we're satisfying our thirst with sugar-sweetened beverages, that issue is becoming worse.
And so in relation to, I think part of your presentation was the drinks as well are high in sodium. If you could clarify that for me as well.
There's a number of beverages where you would find sodium. In a typical can of pop, you're just getting maybe like less than 100 milligrams. So that's not a huge amount. But in things like chocolate milk, and as we've learned in things like hot chocolate, you could be getting a third of a day's worth of sodium.
Excellent. And so do you think then menu labeling is an effective way to influence consumer choice towards healthier choices?
Well, our research has demonstrated that, in fact, it can have an influence. And as I said in the presentation, it's not just influencing consumer choices, but motivating the restaurants to reformulate. And we see evidence of this in the U.S., and I think this would give restaurants the incentive that they need to lower sodium and calorie levels in their foods.
How much time, Chair?
3 seconds.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Thibault. Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much, Mary. You know, very interesting. One of the things that I was hoping to see in this bill when I saw the title come out was that there would be actually an area on physical activity, because I think that's huge. If we're going to actually make people healthier, help people be healthier, that's a key component. The other thing that I find very interesting, your stats were pretty compelling, and 71% of the population is saying that's the one stat they want on there. You did a lot of this research back in 2010, so there's no reason why it couldn't have been incorporated in that suggests that sodium is a big issue. Can you just expand a little on why you think that may not have made it? Were you given the opportunity? Did you make a submission? Were you able to consult with the government before this legislation came out? I'm struggling why, if this is such a big issue, why it would be left out of this bill.
A great point. We actually did a lot of work with Toronto Public Health, who, as you know, a few years ago, their Board of Health put forward a menu labeling proposition, and they were the ones who put pressure, I believe, on the Ontario government, saying if Ontario didn't move forward, Toronto Public Health was going to move forward. And Toronto Public Health was very clear in their recommendation, and it was based on our research, and they said you need to put calories and sodium information on that menu. We've also been in discussions with MPP France Gélinas, who has been an advocate for high sodium warning labels. So we have been involved in the process, definitely, and we always make our research very widely available. It's been covered substantially by the press, so I think that the information is out there and people are widely aware of it. And I'm not sure why the Liberal government chose not to include sodium as part of this bill.
Yeah, certainly I struggle with that as well. When it's as compelling as you've made it, a great presentation, it certainly is something I think everyone knows, or at least basically understands the impacts of sodium. particularly if a health unit has gone to that extent. You've done the research, it's there, you presented. Were you directly able to be, either yourself or your department, have engagement with the Liberal government on this discussion, or did they ever approach you on it? I mean, it's one thing to have it all out there in the public domain, but did they actually, you know, if they've read this, you would have thought they'd have came and said, hey, tell us a bit more about this. We need to probably make sense of this.
We have met with the Ministry of Health. In the past, we exchanged many email communications with them, and they inquire about our work. We've also prepared a letter to the minister about the lack of sodium as part of that bill. So I think we have made it very clear to them. We've presented this data at the ministry.
And they still chose not to put it in.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jelinek.
So I'm an easy sell. I want sodium to be included onto this bill. I want an amendment that would mandate sodium to be on the menu labeling. Do you know of any jurisdictions where you have sodium included on the menu?
Absolutely. So in King County, Washington, which is the jurisdiction I mentioned in my presentation, they mandate calorie and sodium and fat and carbohydrate labeling for other reasons, which we won't get into. And as I said, they have seen very positive decreases in the food supply. As well, I believe Philadelphia also has sodium labeling. So it's something that's happening and being discussed as well.
And those are the same type of restaurant that do work on both sides of the border. So you would catch the big chain which do business there. They have been able to modify their menu. How cumbersome was it? Like, is this something that you need binoculars to be able to get that information when you order your food?
Generally, the legislation tends to have the information at the same font as the price, so it's up there and you can see it, and it's pretty noticeable.
Okay, and so the restaurants south of the borders are able to get that information on the menu. Can you think of any reason why they would not be able to do that once they reach Ontario?
There's no clear reason. All that information is publicly available online on their websites. It's just a matter of putting it up on their menu boards, and as we know, menu boards these days are digital. So I imagine that could be done overnight.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Scorbutakos.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming forward and providing us with very interesting information. Once again, would Mr. Stephen Getz be here? I believe not, so we shall move to the Center for Science in the Public Interest, and I believe we have Mr. Bill Jeffrey, National Coordinator, with us. Mr. Jeffrey, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The Center for Science in the Public Interest is a nonprofit health advocacy organization specializing in nutrition and food issues. We are independently funded. We accept no funding from industry or government. We have a very successful newsletter, Nutrition Action Health Letter. About 100,000 Canadians subscribe to it, and there's a copy of a recent issue in your briefing folder. We support calorie labeling, Mr. Chair, but like the previous witness, we believe that the failure to require sodium disclosure is an important mistake. Elevated blood pressure is identified by the World Health Organization as the leading cause of death in the world, and sodium plays a large role in that. Various estimates peg the death toll attributable to excess sodium in the Canadian food supply as between 10,000 and 16,000 deaths per year. And the World Health Organization estimates between 4 and 8.5 million deaths could be prevented by effectively reducing sodium in the food supply. In Ontario, because we have a public health care system and because the provincial government pays for quite a lot of antihypertensive medication, a lot of the cost is borne by the provincial government. We joined about 40 groups and experts in a joint statement calling for sodium and calorie labeling on restaurant menus. And you have a list of the signatories to that statement in your briefing folder, but they include the Childhood Obesity Foundation, the Canadian Nurses Association, Dietitians of Canada, and the College of Family Physicians of Canada. At least a couple of the industry witnesses have indicated that there's a lot of disagreement in the scientific community about the benefits of sodium reduction. But they've only cited one study. And I would just like to underscore that there may be some difference of opinion about minor details in this, but the vast majority of scientists believe that we really have to dramatically reduce our sodium intake. Health Canada says that Canadians consume about 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day, which is about double of what we need. And sodium reduction is an important part of healthy living, and the governments have been working toward, federal and provincial governments have been working towards supporting Canadians in their sodium reduction efforts. In 2010, the Federal Minister of Health Sodium Working Group unanimously recommended that, in part, applicable provincial regulations be amended to require on-site disclosure of nutrition information, and the text indicates mostly calories and sodium, in a consistent and readily accessible manner. And I would note that one of your previous witnesses from Restaurants Canada was a member of the task force that made that unanimous recommendation. When Premier Wynne was co-chair of the Council of the Federation, premiers endorsed the interim goal to reduce average sodium intake from 3,400 milligrams per day to 2,300 milligrams per day by 2016. Provincial premiers and when Deputy Premier Matthews was Minister of Health, provincial and territorial ministers of health called for regulations to be developed in case timely voluntary sodium reduction efforts were not achieved. Now, I've included in my briefing folder a letter I sent to Minister Demurla specifying some clause-by-clause amendments to the bill, and I won't get into the details of that, but I will just say generally that the bill would be dramatically improved by mandating the disclosure of sodium levels, and importantly, a footnote on menus giving age-appropriate daily sodium intake advice. That's particularly important, I guess, because a lot of the animus for this bill came from concerns about the health of children, and dietary recommendations are substantially different from children, particularly ones in the 4 to 8 year range. And there are a number of reasons why sodium labeling is important, not least of which is that sodium varies much more widely than calories do in restaurant menu items, and it's very easy to change without customers knowing. You could add a teaspoon of sodium to a menu item and transform it from a healthy dish to a very unhealthy dish, as an example. And there's also evidence to indicate that adding that kind of benchmarking information, like indicating the daily recommendation for sodium intake, does actually make menu labeling substantially more useful. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about the Section 5 of the bill, which would prevent municipal health authorities from requiring sodium information or other nutrition information. I am concerned that it might stifle public health innovation.
Thank you very much. I apologize.
Sure.
We'll move to Ms. Gelana to commence.
I think it's there to commence, not to...
PC started, NDP Liberal, and then I go for the next round, NDP Liberal, and then it'll...
It's a pleasure to see you, Bill, and thank you for coming this morning. The arguments that I'm given for not moving ahead with sodium labeling right away seems to be that it would be too big of a change. Looking at other jurisdictions that have managed that change, can you explain to us the magnitude of a change for a restaurant chain to add sodium when they will be adding calories? Calories is in the bill. They will have to do that. We're asking them to also put calories. How big of a change is it for those restaurants to do?
Quite simply, it's more efficient for them to add 2 nutrients at the same time than to do them piecemeal. And I know there was some talk about requiring sodium at some specific point in the future. But my sense is that the real problem is that restaurants don't want customers to find out how much sodium is in their food because they'd have to reformulate, and reformulating takes some time. And I think, frankly, if you have a business model that's based on not being upfront with your customers, then it's a problem, especially when it's about such an important public health issue. So
is this a good enough argument not to do it?
10 to 16,000 people dying from excess sodium in the food supply. We've had nutrition information on prepackaged foods for a decade and a half. It's amazing to me why the government and industry is so stingy with the information they're prepared to disclose on menus at restaurants. 13 nutrients plus calories on menus for a decade and a half, on prepackaged food labels.
And your preference would be to have the exact amount of sodium in milligram put. You would have the item, the price, the calories, and the amount of sodium, or just a flag for high, low sodium?
Both approaches have merits. I think it's fair enough for foods that have very low amounts of sodium to just be exempted from disclosing it, so we don't have a bunch of unnecessary zeros on the menu or very low amounts. But either has a useful application. I think if the commitment to report sodium is in the bill and the regulations specify the manner of reporting it, we could discuss it in greater detail later.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we'll move to the government side. Ms. Hogarth.
Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. I was interested to see that my cheeseburger isn't the worst choice I could make. On the other hand, and I do eat it a lot. But on the other hand, I'm very concerned as a former educator about the health of our young people and their deteriorating or the increasing obesity and problems related to it. I do believe that this bill has some flexibility and very clearly states in it that that at another time additional nutrients will be considered. I don't know when that timeline is, I'll be honest with you. I'm hoping that will happen very soon, but I don't know. I do think that it is flexible, though, and that the process of the bill, we have to have amendments and discussions, and there are good reasons for not putting it in at this time. On the other hand, I'd like to ask you, is menu labeling an effective way to influence consumer choices?
It is an effective way to influence consumer choices because you can't make a choice if you don't have the information upon which the choice is to be based, and that's why it's particularly so important to add the sodium information. And in my view, the public policy case for requiring sodium labeling is stronger than calorie labeling, partly because the products vary so widely in the amount of sodium, and it's so easy to change by adding more. So I'm flummoxed, frankly. I mean, the 40 groups that signed on to our joint statement, some of them are sodium experts and hypertension experts in the world, and not just in Canada, and they think it's important to do this. The World Health Organization recommendations, Health Canada's recommendations. It seemed that there was a collaboration between the federal government and the provincial government about taking some action, but we haven't seen any real steps taken in the past 5 years.
Well,
Okay,
and you
thank
do
you
know.
very much.
Oh,
Apologize. Time is up, so we'll go to Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey. Very interesting, and particularly with regard to the speaker just before, you talked about sodium as well, and now seeing in your information that Premier Wynne endorsed, former Health Minister Matthews endorsed the need for sodium information to be there, and yet it's not in this bill. I can't fathom, I guess, why that would be the case, and I think, you know, it reinforces, I don't know if you're here earlier, I put a motion on the table to extend the actual public input. This is one that we hadn't heard until today, certainly about sodium. It has caught my attention. It's certainly one that Madame Angelina has talked about, and I think it just supports, and my honorable colleague, Ms. Hogarth, just said that there is a opportunity for amendments, there's opportunity for discussion. Well, I hope they're sincere in actually allowing that to happen so that we can make this legislation the best it can be. You've certainly highlighted to me that sodium, both speakers, that sodium is an absolutely critical piece of this bill if we're really going to actually change healthy choices for people. Can you share with me a little bit, I think I heard you say perplexed, maybe that's my word, why this isn't in there?
I honestly don't know. I did participate in hearings that were held in the fall of 2013. I will say I had some difficulty getting into them, but there were a lot of industry representatives there, and so I think other witnesses that indicated that they didn't have an opportunity to intervene. I'm confused by that as well, I suppose. But there were 3 all-day sessions in the fall of 2013, and I thought that the case, at least from the public health side, was very clear that sodium and calories are both very important bits of information, and most of the industry was just favored calorie labeling. but they preferred nothing, frankly, mandatory, but.
And one, and maybe it's just the way I'm reading it, but your second bullet in your deputation talks about the federal government. I'm not, to be honest, at this point as concerned about what the federal government will or won't do. What I want to focus on is this bill, and I don't want to give the government an out, that just because the federal government doesn't do something, this is their bill, this is their ability to put sodium at the forefront, and certainly at the end of the day, I think it's up to them to make sure that we do the best thing we can for Ontarians, and hopefully that would influence the federal counterparts.
Final comments.
Yeah, well, certainly, I mean, there is a clear constitutional role for the provincial government doing something in relation to restaurants. And we haven't seen any action from the federal government. It's a source of great concern for us. And we would like provincial governments to do as much as they can through whatever constitutional powers that they have. And here's an opportunity for it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey, for coming forward. Appreciate your comments. Have a great morning and great day.
Yeah, thank you for this. It's very interesting.
Okay, so members of the committee, we did have a cancellation this morning. Obviously, we're a bit ahead of schedule. I know that Mr. Walker had put forward a motion. We've had some discussion from the three parties, and Mr. Walker did have his hand up previous. So, Mr. Walker, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to reinforce. So, I mean, particularly even more compelling now that we've had a few more presenters in and present more. You know, I find it interesting that the government is so excited to move forward on this bill that they won't allow another day or two. Ms. Jelena, I believe, has said she's worked on this for 7 years. I don't think another week to ensure that we get as much information, informed information, to make the best legislation on behalf of the people we are given the privilege to serve. I'm not certain why they would argue against that. You know, I think my concern that I'm hearing is they're maybe more concerned about the control and moving things forward on their agenda than they are about actually making it the best legislation possible. I'm concerned that it's more about their control and them being able to move it forward and their timetable as opposed to engaging citizens in democracy, as, again, Madam Jelena this morning again reinforced. This is one of the bills that I think I've seen more interest in from the general public, actually taking time out of their busy lives to say, I want you to hear my voice. I want you to understand what I have to say about this legislation. I'm not certain one more week of deputations is going to actually be a detriment to this bill. In fact, I think it behooves us to listen and to engage those people and ensure that we develop the best legislation possible. Is it not worth the extra couple of days to hear from those people that have taken time and are participating in our democratic system? I hear the government often in the House, I hear them in committee, I hear them in media talking about collaboration and partnership. This, to me, taking the approach of they vote against my resolution to allow the public to engage in democracy, tells me that it truly is simply a couple of buzzwords and rhetoric and speaking points. It is my hope that they will actually walk the talk, that they'll actually vote with us on this to allow the public to be engaged, to come forward to this committee, to participate in democracy, and actually have that. You know, the sodium debate has been really, the last two speakers have compelled me to even more want this to happen so we can hear that. What I'm hearing is that's one of the key things that's actually going to change people's behavior, their eating behaviors and their health. Why would we not allow more groups to come in and give us that compelling fact? The Toronto Board of Health has actually implemented this. It's something that they believe so strongly in. So I think it only behooves us. And I once again extend my sincere request to the government to hear what I'm saying. This is an opportunity to hear more groups on a wide variety. There's a lot of stuff in this bill. There's 3 different components to it. Even within the smoking side, there's a number of factions within there between flavored, between the banning, the ages. There's all kinds of stuff, and I think we need to hear as much as we can. One more week, I don't think, is certainly going to change drastically, although I think we could certainly enhance the bill. I think we can make sure that we put all of the factors in there, and maybe the government actually would hear some of those things and make amendments that are going to improve the bill really for the benefit of the people we're serving. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any further discussion? Okay, I shall call for the vote. Those in favor of the motion? Those opposed to the motion? Motion is defeated.
Change the rules as you go along.
Okay, so there's no further business this morning. We shall reconvene at 4 p.m. and I wish everyone a great day. do I recess or adjourn? So this meeting is recessed till 4 p.m.